Happy New Day and welcome to Dr. Reese Live, Head to Toe Healing Live. Dr. Reese created Head to Toe Healing several years ago, and what he's done is he's put together three modalities. He's put together the musculoskeletal system, nutrition, and mindfulness, and those three items work together beautifully to help get the body in a position where it can start healing itself the way it was designed to. And today I have three of our specialists on the call with me, and we're going to be talking about a topic today, hormones. Men have hormones, women have hormones. It seems like today many people have their hormones out of whack, and it's causing all sorts of difficulties. We get inquiries all the time from people wanting to get their hormones in the right condition so that way they're not experiencing a lot of pain or symptoms. So I wanted to reach out to our nutrition expert first, which is Coach Ryan, and then we will pop over to Coach Gingy and Coach Sean to get their perspective on hormones. So Coach Ryan, would you please take the lead on this and explain a little bit more why hormones are a big deal and why so many people are experiencing adverse symptoms?
Well, of course. And from the nutrition perspective, it's pretty easy to see why hormone problems are so widespread. First of all, hormones are made in your organs, right? A hormone is just something that's made in one place in the body to be used somewhere else, mostly as a messenger or a carrier or something like that. But they're all made in organs. Organs need tons of different nutrients. So we already have a massive, widespread nutrient deficiency problem. And where's it going to hit? It's going to hit the organs. It's going to hit the cells too. It's going to hit all the systems. But these organs are big and complicated, and they're energy hogs. They use a lot of energy compared to a blood cell or something like that. I'm talking about the liver, the thyroid, the pituitary, the adrenals. I mean, all these organs and other ones involved. Again, they all use massive amounts of resources, so you need tons of these different nutrients for your organs to work properly, and the organs need to work properly in order to produce the hormones. So, like I said, it is no surprise. And then, of course, we've got all these hormone disruptors in the environment, all these chemicals from plastics and pesticides and all kinds of things. And most people know about that, which is, I think, unfortunate because most of the conversation has gone into those chemicals, right? Well, it's the chemicals that are causing the hormone problem. And they are, but at the same time, we need enough nutrients to run our organs properly to produce all these hormones. And they probably would still be disrupted by chemicals, but at least your body would be able to defend itself better and detox those things. So yeah, as you kind of alluded to, hormone problems are rampant and widespread, both in male and female. And this is also in the metabolic category, right? Anyone who's been watching regularly knows that the metabolism comes up over and over and over. You've got basically two types of problems, structural and metabolic, and hormones are in the metabolic category. So practically everyone that comes into our membership, practically everyone that we deal with is in the metabolic category. So they have all kinds of symptoms, including hormones. And there's a lot more to say on it, but I'm sure the other two specialists here have opinions on it. I know Gingy does, and I know Sean does as well.
All right, if we could pop over to Gingy, and Gingy, could you provide the mindfulness perspective on hormones and how that affects people's bodies and where there might be a disconnect?
Sure. So the mindfulness perspective is basically the fact that you've got this computer-like brain, and it connects to an entire spinal cord and a bunch of nerves and all of this. The whole nervous system from brain all the way down through the nerves into the tissues is controlled by mindfulness. And so, obviously, like Ryan was saying, hormones are created inside of glands, inside of organs, and the nervous system is what regulates this entire process. So there's a bunch of stuff like, cortisol is something that most people are familiar with. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And so if you're thinking about the world as a dangerous place or you're thinking about things that stress you out, it's very easy. I just saw someone say there's an echo. Is there an echo on my mic here or no?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay, well, let's see. Maybe I can turn this down a little bit. So cortisol is easy to understand because you can think about something in a stressful way and it's going to elevate your cortisol levels. You can measure that directly as a result of your attitude or the way that you internalize external events. But some less known things like insulin is also a hormone. But what is its function? It's to help aid getting glucose inside of the cells. So it's not really necessarily something that mindfulness can directly show, oh, if you're feeling this kind of way or you're internalizing the world in this kind of way, therefore your insulin levels go up. However, stress hormones like cortisol, they can steal some of the nutrients that are needed to create insulin, and you can be insulin deficient because of your attitude, because of your disposition. So mindfulness plays a role in all of this, including things like adrenaline is another stress hormone, but melatonin is a sleep hormone that you can easily affect with your mindfulness. Oxytocin is another hormone that helps people bond and make connections. Dopamine is another one talked about all the time on social media and around the world because it's the pursuit and the reward hormone that keeps you motivated. And so it's almost like hormones are the things that help you navigate and approach life. And if you have an effective mindset, then it can easily guide all of the hormones to be used in an effective way, empowering your body to heal, to achieve things, to bond with people, to get good relationships, like across the board. So hormones is such a broad conversation. I wanted to lay out a little bit of a perspective of how broad hormone function really is. But then, then you can get into very specific things like, men having low testosterone is a big deal, and women and their, 30-day cyclical hormones, progesterone, estrogen, and so we can really dive in and work hormonally with any individual where they're at, depending on the perspective, mindfulness, nutrition, posture, to alleviate whatever the issue is that may be going on for the person. So I hope that sets the stage a little bit there too.
Thank you for that. Coach Sean, from a perspective of posture, how can posture help people overcome hormonal issues?
Well, over time, when I started training with Dr. Reese, I've noticed that a lot of the diseases that people are dealing with, especially hormonal diseases, is always coupled with a postural dysfunction or misalignment in that same area. And so with most of the organs being in certain areas like the pelvis, or even, you go up to the neck, anytime those areas are compressed or misaligned in any way, we have to realize that hormones, the primary carrier of hormones would be the blood. And so anytime an area is compressed, or the bones, the muscles are pulling the bones and it's compressing certain organs, we have to realize that that means those organs aren't getting the blood that they need. They aren't getting the hormones that they need effectively or efficiently. And so that starts to create that domino effect of nutrients or hormones not getting to the proper area, and lymphatic fluid not being able to drain from that area. So it starts to build up, and that's where the disease starts to progress more and more. In Dr. Reese's book, the Reverse the Cause book, he lists endometriosis is a big one, PCOS, a lot of testosterone conditions like ED. These things are in the same area. And most likely somebody has something to do with the pelvic tilt, or for like thyroid conditions. Most people have some sort of forward head, and that's always going to put pressure on the thyroid, and it's going to cause a lot of issues. It's hormonally, it's always going to be connected. So yeah, posture definitely has an influence in hormonal conditions.
Thank you for that. Coach Shauna, we have a question from somebody in the chat. Barbara's asking, can you help someone with spine misalignment, suffering from fatigue, and even lung expansion deficiencies? Is that something posture alignment therapy can help with?
Oh, of course. We've had several situations where I remember one person, they were they just noticed, like, out of nowhere. They've been with us for a couple of months, like at least like 3 or 4 months, and they were just tying their shoes one day, and they were like, "Wow, I can tie my shoes without pain," because they had pain in their upper chest with their lungs, but also they had asthma, and their asthma dissipated just from doing postural therapy. And you can see, like, if you look at the posture, you can see that the upper half of the body is collapsing in on the lungs. And another huge case, she had to receive oxygen. She couldn't breathe effectively. And when she started to do posture, you can both see the difference, like in her posture, where one, it showed her body again collapsing in on the lungs, whole lot of upper back rounding. And the other picture, she was standing straight up, and it reflected in her testing, or her the results of the oxygen, because you always would measure how much oxygen she's receiving in the blood, and that shot up. And so it went from like 70 to 90. And so that's just amazing to hear, you know? And yeah, absolutely. We would kind of need more context based off of the pictures that you send to us in the analysis. But of course, yes, I think that this mostly why doctors don't look at postural issues, or why they're just resort to surgery all the time. It's because they don't know how to. They're always focusing on the bones. That's why they have x-rays and MRIs and such. Everything to focus on everything but the muscles, the ones that's bullying the bones. And so if we can get your muscles working properly, then we can get the bones aligned.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Coach Sean. Actually, there's another question in the chat directed towards posture. What about bone-on-bone hip problems? I don't want to get a hip replacement, Joelle's asking.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Hip replacements are terrible. So many different hip replacements. I've seen people always get some hip hike, or their leg after surgery, they find out one leg is longer than the other. And that's not true. Essentially, what happens when you do a hip replacement is that they have to dislocate your whole leg. They dislocate your leg, place the machinery in there, the whatever type of metal or something that they have to use, and then try to align it back. And I would say the majority of the time, it's always going to happen. It's always going to have some type of effect, either not straight away, a couple of months down the line after you start walking and getting used to that new equipment. But it's always going to have some type of problem. And a lot of bone on bone, again, they only believe that cartilage cannot regenerate itself. Well, I ask you, if bones can regenerate, if skin can regenerate, if nails, hair, if all of these things, if the body is able to regenerate all of these things, bones included, even organs to a degree, can regenerate, then why is cartilage all of a sudden just out of that picture? It's not that cartilage cannot regenerate. It's that the area that the dysfunction is still there. So how is the cartilage going to grow, ever fix? You know, it's like having worn down brakes and not being able to replace those brakes. So how's the problem going to get fixed? You're going to say, oh yeah, that area the brakes just keep messing up. I don't know. It's impossible. So you have to fix the dysfunction. You have to give the space again to those joints, and that's when everything starts to align again. And nutrients again, because oftentimes when those two bones or that joint is compressed heavily, nutrients aren't able to get there. So even if the cartilage wanted to start regenerating, there's no source of raw material to start the regeneration process. And so it never has the opportunity, and it just becomes bone on bone, and the body tries to save itself by essentially creating bone spurs, which is like those calcification. And so that's what creates that issue where those joints start to lock up because the body is trying to save itself. So it's not just on accident. The body can only do what it can do, but you have to restore the proper function, basically. And yes, we do that a lot here. We save people before and after surgeries, but typically we would want to save you before surgery.
Thank you for that. So just to recap a little bit, it sounds like with posture alignment therapy, since muscles move the bones, it can increase the space in the vertebrae, increase the posture, the sit bones, so that way potentially the discs can repair themselves and regenerate. Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly. So I can use the spine as a little example. There used to be a little prop that I could show you, but in between every vertebrae is a little disc. And so those situations with herniated disc or spondylitis, any type of bone fusing together, um, that's the situation that's happening. The disc is like sliding out. And once it's sliding out, that weight starts to fall in on one end of the cartilage. And so that cartilage begins to wear away from the wear and tear of just moving with load. It's holding up your body, and it will never have a chance to start regenerating again. So yeah, you do the postural therapy, it'll align the bones again, it'll align everything back into place, and so it can start to grow and run efficiently. It's possible. It's completely possible, but it takes dedication, it takes consistency. you know this is not a quick fix at all. It's not going to happen. You're not going to turn around in like a week or so. It does need time. I've seen people get rid of sciatica in 2 weeks, and this is just random, but I've seen people get rid of sciatica in 2 weeks, and some people it takes 2 months. And so you need to give your body time because you have to build the muscles. The muscles are the important part in this situation. Hope that answers.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, Emily's in the comments. She's saying, I work in a hospital and I see plenty of hip surgeries. Lots of patients tell me that they've had multiple hip surgeries. So it's nice to know there's alternatives in if people are facing hip pain and joint pain, that posture alignment therapy through our membership is a good option for them. A lot of times people don't realize there's other options. So if you're watching this and you know of a friend or a family member that this might benefit from, share the video with them, just share it in Facebook, and that way they can get the information that there are other options. Just looping back to another question, Amber's in the group here, and I think the question's been answered in the chat. However, might be beneficial for people just listening to hear the comments here. She says, why do you guys think dairy is bad? If you come from a dairy farm, are you aware that dairy pus can't totally be filtered away? So Coach Ryan, I'm going to direct this to you. What's your thought on pasteurization of dairy and the cleanliness that dairy farmers have to go through? What's your opinion?
Yeah, well, her main question there, why is dairy not on the poor four food list? It's because it doesn't affect everyone equally. The poor four is the way it is because it doesn't matter who you are, it's affecting you. Whereas dairy, it does affect a lot of people. In fact, there are a lot of members, I get them off of dairy, even just to try and see what happens. And often it is one of the keys to help them get better. Sometimes they're able to go back to it. Sometimes there's, certain types of dairy that they can handle no problem, and certain types that cause them to have a flare up of pain or something like that. So you just got to figure that out. But yeah, it's not it doesn't affect you in the same way that it affects the next person always. But it is widespread. Lactose intolerance in general, especially in America, the industry is disgusting. It's terrible. And most of the viewers, obviously, and most of our members will be in America as well. I'm from Canada. We have a much better dairy system. We're not really allowed to have factory farms. It's basically illegal. So the quality is massively different for Canadians and Europeans and stuff like that, compared to America. America's the worst. So yeah, I mean, I personally wouldn't buy most dairy in America. I avoid a lot of dairy, especially milk. I'd never ever buy milk, especially in America, but even here in Canada. But yeah, her thing about the pus, yeah, it's true. But I would say, so what? So what? If anything, I think that we actually benefit from minor provocation of our immune system, right? For example, a lot of people are against nightshade vegetables. There's this whole thing about vegetables now. Vegetables have these plant defense chemicals and it's bad for us. Meanwhile, all of the longest lived populations, without exception, consume nightshades. And a lot of other plants as well that have these so-called plant defense chemicals. I actually think that that kind of works out our immune system. It keeps it provoked, right? Even alcohol, right? People have been going back and forth on alcohol for decades, because there's this big argument. Does a little bit of alcohol help our health or help longevity? Again, the statistics are a little bit tangled, but it's not that clear cut. And if anything, I think that, again, that little bit of poison is actually good for the immune system. That if you lived completely clean, your immune system would not be prepared for anything and you'd get a mosquito bite and go to the hospital kind of thing. Right? So, yeah, the pus, I mean, show me that it's a problem, right? Your body will develop mucus if it's going through some kind of an immune thing, but it's not automatically caused by meat and dairy. And if you're working healthy, then you can have meat and dairy and other so-called mucus-forming foods and be totally fine, right? At least in terms of disease and symptoms, you can be free of those things while consuming so-called poisons. I'm not saying that, get drunk every day kind of thing, but that little bit of provocation to the immune system, my pet theory is that we actually require it to be as strong as we can be.
So with that, Ryan, is it better to try, if you have a choice between pasteurized dairy or raw dairy, which would raw dairy be better for an individual?
Once again, it depends. It's not whether it's raw or not, right? A lot of people are lactose intolerant. We produce an enzyme to break down lactose. It's called lactase. And the average person after 2 years old, they're not producing it anymore, right? It's there for breast milk. You know, we don't need milk. Let me make that clear. We don't need milk. Milk is for babies, technically. Although we can consume it as long as our immune system doesn't have a problem with it. Now, it is said to be the most common allergen, especially when it comes to so-called autoimmune problems, right? Hashimoto's and rheumatoid arthritis and stuff like that. And there's been a lot of those people where we do need to get them off of dairy, at least temporarily, to heal the intestines and so on, for them to get their result. But this has nothing to do with whether it's pasteurized or not. It's the actual lactose that's in it and the casein and the other proteins that are in it. But pasteurized dairy, in general, my opinion is that it's junk food. It's garbage. It's fake food. It might as well be considered one of the poor fours. Especially milk. Milk is the worst offender. People who are sensitive to dairy, milk is almost always the worst offender.
Thank you for that. We have a couple people in the chat. They're asking about, Teresa's asking, I wish I could get an appointment. Teresa, you can get an appointment. All you have to do is go to drkevinreese.com, look for the start page there, venture around, be curious, look at our testimonials, look at our educational materials that we have on the website. There's so much information there for you. You might want to read a book first, like Peace Over Pain, this one here, or Medical Monopoly, this one here, just to get an idea of what head to toe healing is about first, to see if it's for you. And that way, when you do book that call, you have really great questions for one of our coaches, and we would be happy to chat with you. It is a free call. So again, go to drkevinreese.com. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. We are 100% virtual. Adam was asking where we are located. We're located in Connecticut, but we service people all around the world, from South Africa, UK, Slovenia, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, United States, Mexico, all over. We have members, and it's really amazing because everybody's searching for the same solutions. They're looking for natural ways to get their body in a position so it can heal itself, and that way they can become pain-free and not develop, or where they can reverse the chronic issues that they're suffering from right now. So drkevinreese.com is the place to start. Back to our questions. Cindy says, can I grow myself a gallbladder after it's been removed? I don't think that can happen. However, I know Coach Ryan will have some insights of what you can do to support yourself now that you don't have a gallbladder. Ryan?
I wish you could regrow a gallbladder, but no, you can't. But you can supplement with bile and enzymes before every meal for the rest of your life, because that's what your gallbladder used to do. It used to hold bile to release it when there's food there. And the bile, one of the purposes is to help digest fats, help break up fats. So, yeah, if your gallbladder isn't there, then it's just leaking in bile all the time because it's just connected from the liver directly to the intestine. So instead of a nice timed release, you just get a little drip. So it's never enough there to properly digest fats. And of course, speaking of hormones, one of the most common things that we see is people with gallbladder removed or liver dysfunction in general, and they have a fatty nutrient absorption problem. And of course, I was saying earlier that your body and your organs need a ton of different nutrients to function properly. Well, the most important of those are fatty nutrients because organs are fatty. So yeah, if you have a gallbladder removed, you're going to have a fat problem, a fat absorption problem. You're going to have deficiencies, symptoms that are fatty nutrient deficiency symptoms, and that can be fixed by supplementing with bile and enzymes before every meal for the rest of your life.
And Coach Ryan, to tag on to that, I know that in previous lives, you've talked about if somebody has a gallbladder attack, there's something they can do immediately that can help stop it. Would you please share that again for people that might be new watching this?
Yeah, if you're having pain in any digestive organ, whether it's the gallbladder, the liver, the pancreas, or you just have some random pain in your torso, stop eating for 2 to 3 days. The pain should go away. I don't think that's failed yet.
Thank you
So
for that. This next question is a question for Coach Sean. It's a postural question. Gary's asking, is there any hope for tinnitus? I've had it for 3 years, and he's thinking it's possibly a posture problem. I have poor posture, and I've been trying to pay attention to it more. I'm age 63. What can you do to suggest any sort of, abilities to turn his situation around, Coach Sean?
Most of what we could suggest would be in the membership itself, because tinnitus is a very, very, very common thing that we come into contact with, because most people have what Dr. Reese says as above the shoulder symptoms. And so these come from rounded shoulders or forward head, and this is often caused by being sedentary and looking at a computer all day. So most people are working, or what Dr. Reese would call a computer athlete. Or if you're sitting on a couch, you can have that same type of posture. Like if you sat on a couch and then got up exactly how you're sitting, you would be looking at the ground. It would be a whole rounded back. It would be a C-shaped spine. And so what happens in that situation is that the nerves are compressed, because that's your highway. Anytime you start to get compression or misalignments in the spine, then your nerves can start getting compressed. And your nerves are how your body operates. It's those instant messages to your body, blinking, raising one hand, stuff like that. And so if your body is not able to function properly because there's a compressed nerve, and so those electrical signals aren't getting to the right area, then that's when you start to have a lot of issues. And even more so in the head. Same thing that I mentioned before, as far as like kinks in the hoses. And so like blood flow, nutrients are not able to get to the head, or the reverse, the lymphatic drainage, nutrients aren't able to get out. Lymphatic fluid is not able to get out, your body's sewage system. And so if you have that issue of tinnitus, you're just stacking up with toxicity in the head, but you're also not being able to get the nutrients to the head. So that's your raw material and your oxygen and hormones, like we spoke on before. So a lot of that, I would say, in the meantime, just be conscious of how long you're spending sitting down. You shouldn't be sitting down an hour on end. You shouldn't be sitting down 3 hours on end. You should be doing something, even if it's getting up, going looking out the window, go to the bathroom. I don't know, do something, get up. You shouldn't just be laying there all day. I think that's a big reason why people in the hospital, and the minute they go to the hospital, among other reasons, I'm not saying this is the primary reason, but they're just standing all day in the bed doing nothing, in the worst posture position you can be in. And so it affects them. You see them deteriorate. And so that was a little bit of a tangent, but yes, we can help with tinnitus. We deal with it all the time, but it takes a lot to work, because most of what humans are doing is sedentary work nowadays. We aren't as active as we used to be. And it's only been this little small dot of human history that we've been more sedentary than ever before. And so those are the results. You get tinnitus, you get headaches, you get vertigo, you get sinus infections, sinus issues, allergies, stuff like that, brain fog. The list can go on. Anything that affects your neck to your head is any condition that you can think of is going to possibly come up due to this forward head and rolled forward shoulders.
Thank you for that. It's amazing though. So many people in our membership, they come into a posture class, they get started in the beginning, and there's a kind of a check-in process where you assess how your body feels. And then by the end of class, that same assessment's done. And literally everybody feels an improvement. It doesn't take much to feel some improvement. I'm not saying that your tinnitus will be fixed in one session. It takes time to make those corrections, but people's symptoms are going away quite frequently. So the next question I'm going to direct towards Coach Gingy first, and then we'll pop over to Ryan because I'm sure he will have some great information on this as well. We have a person here asking, what can you do to reverse a person with schizophrenia? So from a mindfulness perspective, Coach Gingy, is there something that can support the body from that perspective?
Well, schizophrenia is a very serious psychological problem. And I don't know of any way that you could get through to a schizophrenic person and just say, okay, sit down, let's be intentional with your mindset. Maybe there are some ways, maybe there's some experts, maybe there's some therapeutic approaches. But as far as I know, this is more of a nutritional and postural issue. But as somebody's coming out of schizophrenia, they're trying to understand and internalize what has been going on for them. That's when I would say that adopting a mindfulness practice for that would be incredibly powerful because you wouldn't want to just have somebody come out of schizophrenia, starting to in these little blips and not really understand what's going on or start to feel like, they're broken and they end up in a different type of psychological stress. So I would work with somebody as they're coming out of that in order to help them adjust and acclimate and then feel empowered through the process. But yeah, I think the underlying root cause is probably, and I don't think anybody thinks their way into schizophrenia. Now it's possible because one of the underlying issues with schizophrenia, or one of the effects, I'll say, one of the effects of schizophrenia is that you have subconscious content coming into the conscious awareness without really any separation. So people are seeing and hearing things that aren't really there, but they don't recognize what the divide is and what's happening. So if you're just looking at it purely psychologically, that's more or less what schizophrenia is. Now, to have somebody sit them down and say, "Here's how you distinguish between the two," it's really hard to think your way out of that problem. So, in all reality, I wish I had better news, but as they start topping up on nutrients and doing exercises and stuff, you can see them start to come out just like you would with someone with dementia or something. And then you can start helping them guide the ship and start to notice, oh, no, no, that's just the psychological thing I've been working with. Oh, that's just this thing. Okay, I'm understanding now what's going on for myself. And in that way, they can actually go through the entire process to be completely healed of that.
Thank you for that. Coach Ryan, from the nutritional side of things, is it possible to reverse schizophrenia?
Yeah, and actually, in my opinion, it's one of the easiest things to deal with. But the hard part is dealing with the schizophrenic person, right? We know that lots of nutrient deficiencies are involved, especially a couple of the B vitamins are going to stand out kind of above the others. But I would expect multiple nutrient deficiencies. I would expect food allergies, and that's probably going to be their favorite food that they probably eat every day. Could be one of the dyes in Cheetos or something like that, right? Every schizophrenic eats 100% junk food, right? That's not really a controversial claim. In fact, I met one in all these years. I met one who claims to be schizophrenic and claims to eat a decent diet, although he's not off the poor four, but it's not 100% junk food. But basically, they all live on junk food. Most of them are alcoholics. I'm not meaning to bash them here. I'm just saying that you're nutrient deficient to begin with. The body's hungry, craving for minerals and other nutrients. You eat food that doesn't have those nutrients in it, you're going to keep craving them. They keep eating the chips and the candy and the soda pop and the beer and the whatever has the sugar in it, trying to satisfy these mineral deficiencies. And in all likelihood, I would bet that every single case has a food allergy. And it's just, again, in processed foods, there's tons of these antagonistic compounds in it, whether again it's food dyes or MSG or something like that. So they're being constantly provoked, not in a good way, like I mentioned earlier, a little bit of provocation. It's not that, it's a massive provocation that can cause you to literally go crazy, right? Whether you're a child or an adult. The alcohol, which is again almost 100%, but if I was a betting person and I never met the person, I would say they probably drink alcohol. It's not going to happen to everyone, but they're already deficient. They're already being provoked by food allergies. And then you add alcoholism and drug use on top of that, and that depletes nutrients even further. So to me, it's a very simple situation to reverse. The hard thing is dealing with the schizophrenic person. And that's why almost every single time we're asked about it, it's not the person themselves who's asking about it. It's their father who's asking about it. It's their friend. It's their ex-wife that's asking about it. It's not the person themselves, right? So if the person themselves doesn't have the commitment to do it, how is it going to work, right? We don't put people in institutions anymore. If you did, you could just take away the alcohol and the drugs, load them up with B vitamins and minerals, and they would probably be fine in a matter of weeks, to be honest, or at least much, much, much better in a matter of weeks. Again, the primary problem is the cooperation of the schizophrenic person itself. If I had full control, I would consider it one of the easiest things that we can do in this business. Again, you just feed them large doses of nutrients, real food, and keep them away from alcohol and food dyes. That's it.
Thank you for that. Amber's, actually, I'm going to just answer this for Amber. She's asking, are the posture classes online? Yes, Amber, they are online through our membership. We have a 365-day program for people. It takes decades for people's bodies to start falling apart because of different habits that they've done over the years, different things that they're consuming, environmental contributing factors as well. So it takes time to do head to toe healing. So we want you to give it a year. And in our membership, we have access to posture alignment therapy every single week. We have about 6 live classes in addition to many other live classes. But when you get into our membership, we teach you head to toe healing so you can get your body in a position so it can start healing itself. And if that is something that you're wanting to do, or you know somebody that this would benefit them, share this live, and then they can go to drkevinreese.com, pick up one of our books, read those to see what we do and see if it's for them. Next question, I'm going to direct this towards Ryan. Felicia's asking, what ways can lupus be reversed or Graves' disease to cut out some of the medication?
Well, with Graves, the thyroid needs a lot of nutrients. We use all 90 essential nutrients. I would use extra high doses of iodine and selenium and a few others. And like I kind of alluded to earlier, that's one of the main things that we do in this membership, because almost everyone has a metabolic problem, but more specifically a thyroid problem. At least when I say almost everyone, I mean almost everyone who has multiple different symptoms, right? Most of the people who come into our membership have multiple different symptoms, and they fall into the thyroid category. So both of them are so-called autoimmune. So I already mentioned earlier, dairy is the number one thing that most people believe, I mean, in the alternative world, most people believe is actually provoking the autoimmune response, especially milk itself, because it has a lot of proteins in it that are very, very similar to human proteins. Again, different theories on the exact mechanism here, but dairy is implicated heavily, both theoretically and in epidemiological studies and stuff like that. There's a lot of arrows pointing towards dairy being a big problem. But with lupus, I've seen lupus get almost 100% better just from them getting off of gluten. Because the glutens, and it could be any grain, not just the gluten-containing grains, but, the big ones, the wheat, barley, rye, and oats, get off those. I've seen lupus, almost all the symptoms go away just from that without supplementation. although the results would probably be better with supplementation for sure. Yeah, you got to stop damaging the guts. It's the grains that are damaging the guts. And when it comes to the dairy, the already damaged guts with leaky gut basically are allowing these whole proteins, these whole milk proteins through into the blood, and the body's reacting against them, right? Mobilizing an immune response against them, which is what it's supposed to do. It means it's working properly. But whole proteins are not supposed to get into the blood. So anyone with an autoimmune problem, we would get them off the grains immediately. And I would strongly emphasize getting off of dairy, at least for now. We'll be starting a proper elimination diet so we can get the fire under control and then try playing around reintroducing some things as the months go on. And we could try this down the road as well. You know, maybe they haven't had dairy in 2 months, they're feeling a lot better. They're going to try just a little bit of cream cheese or something like that. Boom, it set me off. Okay, put it away. We'll try again in 3 months, kind of thing, right? And often they can start introducing certain things later on once the situation is under control. And yeah, there's a lot of nutrients involved, right? You're talking about the immune system. There's always going to be tons of different nutrients involved. So no matter what, we always use all 90 essential nutrients, but the priority for everyone is to fix the digestion first. And in the case of autoimmune problems, to me and many others in this alternative realm, it's mostly a food problem, digestion problem that is causing autoimmune problems.
So with that being said, Coach Ryan, would you please, for new people that are just showing up today, listening to our live, would you please share what the poor four foods are, and especially with oats, why is oats not so good for somebody to have?
The poor four are gluten, oil, fried, and fake. And oats, I like to say that oats are for goats because it's impossible for you to break them down. You can't break them down. You can't digest those proteins properly. And it is basically a gluten, right? Just because it doesn't have the exact same name, all grains have gluten-like compounds. And there are many people who are sensitive to all of them, right? It doesn't matter if it's a gluten-free grain. It doesn't matter even if it's not even a true grain, it's a pseudo grain like buckwheat or quinoa. There's a lot of people who can't handle those as well. There's a lot of different reasons for that, and we have, detailed explanatory modules in the program there. But yeah, it's not just gluten. So a lot of people think, oh, I got off of wheat, barley, and rye, and I'm going to be good. And I ask them, because they're not feeling good still, I ask them, well, what are you eating? Oh yeah, I have oats every day for breakfast, Even rice can be a problem for these people, at least until their guts are healed. Because there's gluten-like proteins that are similar enough that you can't break down, that are inflammatory. And when you inflame the intestines, now you prevent nutrients from being absorbed properly. Because as the villi in the intestine, that's the absorption organs there, little finger-like shag carpet inverted. That's what the intestine looks like. And if those inflame, there's less surface area for things to absorb. So it creates an absorption problem. But the glutens also, again, they loosen the junctions of the skin there, the skin lining of the intestine, which allows things to get through that are not supposed to get through. And that's how your body has an immune reaction to those food particles that get through. So oats are for goats. It's not human food. It's junk. Get rid of it. It can even cause problems in your horse, People say, but my horse eats it and it's fine. Well, the horse's stomach weighs more than you do, and it still causes problems for them.
Thank
And
you for
the goat has 4 stomachs, by the way. That's why we say it. Goat has 4 stomachs. It can break down oats. It can break down bark if it wants to.
That's why they hire goats to eat a field or somebody's backyard when they have overgrown blackberry bushes. They can eat anything.
Mhm.
It's crazy. We have another question from Deborah. Deborah's asking, what about hyperthyroid? Can that be reversed?
Yeah, we were just talking about Graves. Yes, it can.
Okay, wonderful. And then we have a question about reversing epilepsy. Are there ways to support the body to reverse epilepsy?
I assume the question's still on me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we spoke about this last week where, most people who have seizures, most of them are children, and most of them just actually grow out of it naturally. But the problem is the medical world doesn't have a mechanism to tell you, okay, you don't need to take the drugs anymore, right? You have one seizure when you're 3 years old, they'll put you on those drugs for the rest of your life. and those will interfere with other nutrients. So your brain's made of fat. It's also made of protein. Seizures can also be caused by everything that we're talking about here today. MSG can cause seizures. Aspartame can cause seizures. I'm not saying this is going to happen for everyone, but sensitive individuals, food dyes, and a lot of different food chemicals can cause seizures. And this has been well known since like the 60s. This is not new information, right? So chances are junk food caused it in the first place, especially because the child's immune system is not fully developed yet. So they're more sensitive than adults typically when it comes to a lot of these things. And multiple nutrient deficiencies. The brain's made of fat, just like all the organs we were talking about earlier, talking about hormones. All those same nutrients are needed for the brain. Certain ones are, more likely to cause seizures if you're deficient, especially magnesium and omega-3. Any of the fatty nutrients, though, really, right? A digestion problem as well. The brain is also made largely of protein, right? Fat and protein. And if you have a digestion problem, you're probably going to have a hard time absorbing fats and proteins. So now you're lacking the raw materials, not just for your brain to work, but for your entire nervous system and your entire muscular system to work as well. So, like I said, the problem is most people actually just grow out of seizures because most of it happens in children. Those who happen later, typically they're on drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, right? And chances are one or more other problems too. Bad foods, or even they're trying to eat good, but they're still eating grains and stuff like that, oils, right? Inflammatory. It just long-standing nutrient deficiencies. But in older people, almost always drugs are involved. And with younger people, again, if we could see into the future, we would see that most of these children would never get another seizure anyways. But the medical system doesn't know, again, how to deal with it, and they're lazy, so they just keep you on drugs forever. You know, if you have a stroke, they'll put you on blood thinners for the rest of your life, kind of thing, without batting an eye about it. So yeah, I reckon that a lot of the children who are on anti-seizure med, not all of them, but a lot of them could just stop taking the drugs, and they would never get a seizure. We can't tell anyone to stop taking a drug or not. But either way, we would pump the body full of nutrients, just like we would with anybody else, whether they even have symptoms or not, and teach them about eating properly and getting off the bad foods. And I'd be very, very confident that they could at least experiment if they wanted to, because again, we're not allowed to tell you whether to take drugs or not, but if they wanted to experiment with it, and chances are the child or even the adult will be totally fine. Feed your brain, feed your body, get off the bad foods, get off all the fake chemicals in foods and stuff, and aspartame and all that, and you shouldn't have a seizure.
Thank you for that, Ryan. We have another question that's directed to you from George. He says, is it possible to come off of anti-rejection medication after a kidney transplant? It's been 1.5 years.
Now that one is a tough question. And it's a question that I don't like because I don't have a specific answer for it. The body's supposed to reject an organ when you put it into it, right? Talking about foreign food particles in the blood, the body's immune system is supposed to react to that. So, your body reacting to an organ, that's what it's supposed to do. It doesn't want a foreign organ in it. So it's not as simple as stopping other drugs. And it's a tricky situation because what we want to do is support your immune system, right? Whereas the anti-rejection drugs lessen the immune system. Now, there are cases out there where people stop taking the anti-rejection drugs on their own. It's actually not something I've ever even hinted at advising because it's tricky grounds here, right? I simply don't know. What the medical world is doing in this case actually makes some kind of sense, right? You lower the immune system, then it's less likely to respond to the organ. But there's also, on the flip side, no evidence that I'm aware of that supporting the immune system actually causes the body to reject the organ. Right? People reject the organ even when they're on the anti-rejection drugs sometimes too, right? So it's really not that clear cut, but we have seen it. We have seen people get off of the anti-rejection drugs. It's a decision you're going to have to make for yourself. But no matter what, whether the drugs are in there or not, I would still use all 90 essential nutrients, right? I would still be off all the bad foods. I would still do the posture alignment therapy. I would still do the mindfulness.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I wanted to just loop back to our opening topic, which was about hormones. We have so many people that come to us that their hormones are really out of whack, whether it be men or women. Let's just kind of zone in on the men. Sometimes their testosterone levels are low, and I would imagine that each of our modalities with posture, nutrition, and mindfulness play a role in that. Could each of you take a moment to share your opinion on how to increase testosterone levels or get the body in a position where it might function more for a gentleman in that situation? I'll start with Ryan.
Well, all the organs that make hormones need lots of nutrients. Some of them are becoming more well known right now and are more popular. I see lots of products being sold based around zinc and boron. Even at Walmart, their testosterone boosting product has got lots of boron in it. You know, I wouldn't recommend using those individual nutrients. You get on a full all the 90 essential nutrients at once. So you don't buy them all separately. They're all in the same products. And we'd only boost a couple of these if we need to. But yeah, once again, those same nutrients are needed in the organs that produce the hormones to begin with. And of course, chemicals, sedentary lifestyle. These are things that everyone agrees on basically. Chemicals, sedentary lifestyle, lack of exercise, especially lack of muscle mass. All of that contributes to testosterone problems. The overuse of caffeine, alcohol, marijuana, even debatable that last one. There's been some kind of mixed evidence, but there's no question that it does affect hormones. And of course, these are the things that everyone's doing, right? All the young men out there, they're all vaping and playing video games. I don't want to generalize too much, but they're really not doing a lot of the things that they would need to do to have a healthy hormone system. And I did mention muscle mass. Well, you've got a lot of people who are at the gym building muscle, but they're not feeding their body enough of the nutrients to support a healthy growth. And a lot of people actually are burning their metabolisms out. I mentioned that hormones are part of the metabolic system. Well, if you exercise, especially vigorously, you know, you're training hard, you're gaining muscle, you're depleting a lot of nutrients. You need more than the couch potato to maintain that, to maintain your metabolism. And if your metabolism starts to crash or starts to become stressed, your hormones are going to be thrown off. And that's all your hormones. Gingy mentioned a bunch of other hormones earlier, like melatonin and stuff. That stuff's all going to start to be skewed as well. Right? Testosterone might not be the first one to go down, but your hormones are going to be messed with if you're exercising vigorously without proper supplementation, especially if you're eating junk foods in order to do it. You know, a lot of these protein powders and pre-workouts are absolute trash, full of garbage stuff in there. And, you know, that's provoking your immune system and all this stuff. And it's failing to provide the body with everything it needs for its hormone system to work properly. So you can't just work out and it'll be all good. But if you do build muscle alongside these other things, then you should have healthy testosterone. Honestly, my testosterone was in the 900s last time I checked, and I am a couch potato, to be honest. You know, I work on the computer. I sit a lot. It's a sedentary lifestyle, but even with that, you know, while using the 90 and staying off the bad foods and all this stuff, my testosterone's still perfect.
That's awesome. Let's pop over to Gingy. Gingy, do you have an opinion on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So the mindfulness perspective is a little bit different. I would have people look at what it feels like when their testosterone is topped off and what type of behaviors and ideas get in the way of, their like, for example, some people may think, like Ryan was saying, if I just go and I work out and I work out and I work out, it's going to boost my testosterone. But in their minds, they have some type of this is what it means to have high testosterone. It means that I'm extra animated. It means that I'm extra strong. It means that I'm extra, assertive or whatever the case is. And those things are not inherently linked to testosterone. Those types of behaviors, those types of, feelings and mental states, they can be a result of high testosterone, but they could also be a result of low testosterone. So it would be good to get some type of metric, get some type of test that you can reference, and have one at the beginning and one after a month and one after 3 months or something, and actually monitor and know for yourself what are the sensations and the thought processes and stuff that are associated with the higher or lower levels of testosterone. Other than that, like one of the biggest things that I see, well, actually, there's two things. Let me start with this one. I think it's good for people to understand what Ryan was talking a lot about today, which is metabolic issues. Your metabolism is not really just like a thing. in the body. It's not the thing that burns fat and keeps your energy up or whatever. I mean, people have all these different ideas of what metabolism is. First off, let's get clear that metabolism is basically just chemical reactions in the body that either release energy and break stuff down or builds things up in the body. So your metabolism is literally the process of your body taking nutrients and assimilating them and building structures and things in the body. Or taking stuff that may not be very healthy, breaking it down and eliminating it through waste. So your metabolism is this necessary process, just like you could say the healing process of the body is inherent. Okay. What does it mean for there's all this different stuff that happens for your body to naturally heal. And it can only do that if it's in certain modes, like the parasympathetic nervous system allows for this rest and digest mode, allows for the body to heal. And if you get chronically stressed out, if you get all these other things going on in your life, all of that can get in the way of hormones in general, and especially for men. One of the biggest testosterone burnout things that I've seen with men specifically is chronically being stressed out, chronically being worried, having an overactive adrenal system in the body. And the cortisol and all this stuff, the bad sleep, maybe if they're stuck inside staring at blue light all day, there's all kinds of things like this that if they were really mindful enough, they'd notice, oh, when I spend 12 hours in front of a computer, yeah, I feel this way, and that's associated with low testosterone. Oh, if I'm stressed out all day and I'm not thinking right, or I'm not sleeping right, or I'm emotional all day, that's going to impact my testosterone levels. Because it's less about having a good testosterone level and it's more about feeling really good, feeling happy, feeling healthy, feeling energized, feeling optimistic. Those things are all associated with your hormone levels and they're associated with your lifestyle, your behavior, your mindset, your emotional state. The holistic approach to the human lifestyle is what allows all of this to either be high testosterone, low testosterone. So, like I said, you could eat your way into it, you could think your way into it, you could feel your way into it, you could stop sleeping, and that'll lower testosterone. You could have destructive or constructive patterns in your life that support or not your levels of testosterone. And I think one last thing I want to say about this testosterone conversation for men is that all the hormones come from the same. And Ryan, actually, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've been telling people that all hormones are made from the same raw materials, like cholesterol is one of those things. And if your body is taking all those resources to make cortisol, stress hormone, it's going to have less resources to make other hormones. And if that's the case, then you want to try to preserve as much of your hormonal raw material for things like testosterone, for things that like melatonin or serotonin or any of these other hormones that are constructive in the body. So it's a good framework to have in mind. Oh, if I'm spending all day stressed out, I'm depleting resources for healthy hormone function.
Not only are you depleting resources, but the very act of producing cortisol itself will shut off the production of other hormones.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So these are really good frameworks to keep in mind because the whole goal of mindfulness is to number one, inner peace. Number two, establishing an effective framework for you to approach and engage with life. And if you have an effective framework like, oh, if I'm using up all my resources for, my hormones with stress hormones, well, then there's not going to be enough over here for testosterone, for example. My libido might get really low or something, or my drive and my mental clarity might get really low. Okay, so I want to decrease the stress over here so my body can reallocate those materials. Or, like Ryan was saying, literally shutting off the production of other hormones to prioritize cortisol. And even if just that little framework, that little understanding can shift the way that you think about things, well, I'm not going to go and deal with this person because it's just going to stress me out and I don't want to sacrifice my tomorrow for this interaction. Or figuring out a framework for you to internalize external events in a healthy, constructive, positive way to where even if you're dealing with something stressful, you don't have to be stressed. You don't have to see it as a dangerous, fear-based threat in your environment and activate your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. You can engage with it and realize, I'm not going to die. This is just a little bit of turbulence I have to deal with for today, and the rest of the day is going to be a piece of cake. And you can completely shift it and have that whole engagement not come with a cortisol spike. So these are things we get into with the in the membership with the members. It's because everybody's on a day-to-day basis showing up to the class being like, hey, here's something I've been working with. How do I internalize this so that it doesn't trigger me? How do I internalize this so that it doesn't spike my cortisol and rob my nutrients? And how do I do it effectively so that I'm still healing through my day? Okay, and we talk about options. We get creative. We come up with frameworks, and then they go back and they implement it. Then they come back the next call. It worked really good, but then I had this thing happen. How do I work with this? And it's all about getting creative and being in the practice of mindfulness, being aware of what's going on and being intentional with how you respond to life.
Thank you, Genji, for that. I want to just pop over to Coach Sean, see if he has any insights about testosterone levels and how posture can affect that and actually make it better for men.
Yeah, well, it's kind of an indirect approach, mainly and simply just get movement, you know. You want to clear out the kinks in the hose, both the lymphatic hose and the blood hose. And so when you get movement, that primes your body up. As you say, Karen, motion is lotion. And so you get enough movement. And I always ask people, are you active? And they're like, yeah, I go work out. It's like, I wasn't asking that. That's about at most hour. For some people, it's like 2 hours of the day that you're doing some type of activity. But what are you doing the rest of the day? Because I mean, if you're doing an exercise for like what, like 30 minutes, one hour, and you're sitting down for 6 hours after that, like where's the balance in that? And so I would just say the one thing to drive home is movement, and you can put a little bit of mindfulness into that. Just be mindful of how much you're moving a day. Think back, like, when was the last time I pulled myself up on something? When was the last time I jumped on one leg? When was the last time I jumped? Think about these things. All movement is lotion for the bones and ligaments and all of that. But you need it. You need it. It's a part of health. It gets things flowing. And as we said before, the hormones are in the blood. So if you want to clear the kinks in the hose, you need to have movement.
Thank you for that. One last question directed to Ryan, and then we're going to close up shop for the day. So Paulette's asking, can someone come off of high blood pressure medicine without the risk of a health threat?
Well, of course. And if you just simply get off of them and don't change anything else, then yeah, your blood pressure is probably going to go up. But we would, again, I always have to say we can't tell anyone whether to take a drug or not. But if they were asking, hey, I want to stop taking the drug, what would I do to lessen that? You would take all 90 essential nutrients. You would be off all the bad foods. You'd be doing your posture alignment. You'd be doing your mindfulness all at the same time, because that's what we do in head to toe healing. And you can either wean down, which is what I would do personally, because not all blood pressure drugs have a withdrawal concern or anything like that, or like an immediate boost in blood pressure if you stop taking it. But in general, most drugs are safer to wean off of them, so that's what I would personally do. And you can see, if you drop the dose in half and the blood pressure goes shooting up, okay, you're not ready for it yet, right? We need to continue supporting the body so that that's not going to happen. And if you stay on the drug, actually, you have a risk of seeing the blood pressure drop too low, right? Because you're doing the things to have healthy blood pressure in the first place, but now you're also taking the drug to lower it more, so you can actually be too low. So you keep on top of it. But we would look at your other symptoms, right? Blood pressure is only one symptom. Blood pressure never exists by itself. I mean, it's possible, but in practice, it never happens by itself. So we'd be looking at your sleep, your weight, right? How you feel, your energy, your skin, whatever else is going on, pain in your hands, right? All kinds of symptoms that people would have. And we would be looking at those things to get better, to judge your overall health improving or your overall metabolism improving. Again, blood pressure is part of the metabolic umbrella. So we would do all these things at once, and the blood pressure should be improving. And if anything, it can go down too much, and then you would be wise to have a talk with your doctors, what we're supposed to say, about lowering the doses. And you can always make this choice yourself, right? It's your choice whether you take drugs or not. Lots of people experiment getting off of the drugs, seeing what happens. In many cases, there isn't a huge problem. If there isn't, then that's fine. And if you're doing all the healthy stuff that we're talking about here, it shouldn't be a big problem.
Thank you for sharing that, Ryan. We really appreciate your insights, and also Coach Gingy and Coach Sean's. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you're listening to the replay, we're so happy that you're here. Reach out to us at drkevinreese.com to get more information. There's a lot of educational materials there for you to watch, videos for you to watch. There's testimonials of people that we have helped get out of chronic pain and chronic conditions. And then there's also a start page. If you want to get more information, schedule a call with one of our coaches to get your personal questions answered. We're here for you. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you same time next week, 2 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday for the next Head to Toe Healing